Okay, so today I'm going to talk about and struggle through my review of an American classic. It's F. Scott Fitzgerald's This Side of Paradise. You've sat through my struggles before, and as we know, this isn't a terribly academic review. There are so many proper literature reviews into all things F. Scott Fitzgerald, and This Side of Paradise being his debut novel. There will be so many, well aware of that, but I just want to tell you my thoughts as I read them. One part of the point of me doing kind of a layperson's review of my F. Scott Fitzgerald books like This Side of Paradise is I kind of want to make them seem accessible, because I think sometimes when you read all these analyses in these literature reviews, it can seem heavy, and it can seem like books like this are only for certain people, and maybe certain academic type people, certain people who want to study the art and appreciate the art and bring something to it. And at the end of the day, F. Scott Fitzgerald was a horrendously popular artist, author, even when he was alive. This one was published when he was alive, and they were meant to be consumed by the people. And so I think even if I stumble through this review, make a complete hash of it, my insights are, you know, worthless, that's fine. If it makes someone go, hey, I might read it, and they didn't think that before, I think that's been alright. I will do my best to tell you what I liked, what I didn't like about it, and we can just go from there. In terms of the book itself, this is the beautiful Penguin F. Scott Fitzgerald kind of special collection they did. These are hardback classics, they have beautiful Art Deco. Oh, there's my bookmark. They have beautiful Art Deco dust covers on them. The design is beautiful. I hauled them all in a separate video. I'll show you there. And I accidentally read Beautiful and Damned first, which is a different video. And I should have read this one first because it was his first book, but I got them mixed up. In terms of reading, this is a lot easier to read than Beautiful and the Damned. It took me a while to get switched on into Beautiful and the Damned, or Beautiful and Damned. However, the thing to say is this has got a lot less to get dialed into. It's not as developed in terms of character, and it's not as developed in terms of plot. However, it's a very enjoyable, light read, and I do wish I'd read this first because I think it would have helped me read Beautiful and the Damned better. For me, the main sort of themes and points that I want to talk about, this will be full of spoilers by the way, so either keep watching with spoilers or leave, but please get involved in the discussion down below if there is going to be any, because I do really appreciate it. The main things were, I think that F. Scott Fitzgerald is finding his feet as an author. It's quite obvious in that point of view. He's trying out different techniques, he's borrowing different kind of devices. I'm not clever enough to know who they're all being borrowed from, but you can tell that he's almost trying on different suits throughout the book, and you know, he's saying this is the style of this person, this style of this person, and you know, just finding his feet, which I like. However, it means that it's not the most cohesive of books. Another thing that means it's not the most cohesive is there is lots of like funny little dalliances, I guess, and in other directions and tangents. There is, let me find one. There's some songs, there's some poems, there's little aspects of the script device, which I talked about more in Beautiful and Damned. They go off into different tangents. There's quite philosophical debates, which actually fits because a main part of this is personal kind of philosophy, and almost this is the generation, that sort of lost generation. This is a sort of lost generation, you know, 1900 to the First World War, where you have all these young adults who are living their lives, and then suddenly they're in war. And in America though, so war from afar, but still war. And one of the descriptions that I read about this in one of the reviews that I read was, this is a chronicle of a generation. And I liked that way of looking at it. It is a chronicle of a generation, of relatively privileged perspective of the generation, however one that is definitely trying to find its voice, its character, and where it's going. Overall, this is essentially a quest for identity, and I think it's explored quite well. I like, you know, some of these tangents, I think they're described, you would probably describe them as frivolous. They're not needed, they are frivolous, but I think that is part of the quest for identity, and there is this this meandering through Amory Blaine's quest for identity. And there's a quote that I wrote down here, which is from the reviewer, which I liked, is it's capturing the youth of a generation that would become lost in the aftermath of World War I. And I think that sums it up, because Amory Blaine is essentially going through a revolt from the previous generations, the older generations, which young people have always done through. However, they're then getting kind of confronted by this massive thing, war. And I think it's lost and it's never captured again, and it never will be, because it's World War I. It was a massive kind of fractious time, which really did kind of, you know, it was a real standpoint in modernity, if we're going to get really quite academic from that point of view. I like the story. I think Amory is very likable. It explores different things that I think was quite unusual for the time, such as sexuality, prohibition, all those fun things, which is really interesting from a cultural point of view, just to get that insight. And I also think they're done well. All of Amory's relationships with women, I think, were explored just really nicely. These were insights into different women from Amory's point of view, his relationships with them, his kind of loves, his love affairs, the non-love affairs. I think it was done really well. It was really insightful, and also reflected in his quest for identity, his maturing as a person, not just his sexual kind of maturing as well, which I think was really good. Other formats that I thought were worth pulling out is anecdotes, poems, plays, letters and diaries. So Hetty just came in and gave me the fright of my life. So all these different formats contribute to the kind of incohesive nature of This Side of Paradise, but I think it does show that kind of meandering path and quest for identity, which I mentioned before. The other thing that I wrote down was on the topic of modernity, and American modernity is kind of an interesting theme, although not directly explored, is that this is quite a pivotal time for America as a country, and it's sort of defining themselves as a world power, as a great power. And then you obviously have the war, which is on the radar but not directly impacting, so it's quite distant. And then I think the whole kind of collegiate life was really interesting, and how that was explored, you know, especially in the context of people's youth, and whether that's sexuality, prohibition, and the relationship of these products of American modernity, so Amory and his compatriots, and how they interacted with the wider world, whether that was previous generations, their friends, their families, etc. I think was really interesting and really well done. The other thing I wanted to talk about when it came to modernity is I think there was a really open-minded and progressive view about women as well, and how Amory treats women. I think it could have came across as almost kind of player, as way we would say it in today's world, but I think in the dialogue that F. Scott Fitzgerald puts forward, he really empowers the women who are opposite Amory with some really good quotes and some really good words and insights into what being a woman is like in this American modernity. And so I think even though it's very male focused, because Amory is the main guy, and I think there's a lot of the kind of male bonding aspect and kind of masculine focus of the book, I think it may not seem like an empowered feminist text by any stretch of the means, but I think if you look at the words the women say, I think actually it shows that I think F. Scott Fitzgerald gave a lot of power to women, and especially in their relationship with men, which I thought was worth highlighting. And I did actually write down some quotes that I thought were interesting, but I don't know if I want to read them out because they're quite long reading them now. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I'm going to continue to read F. Scott Fitzgerald because, as I mentioned before, I've not read American classics, especially American modern classics like F. Scott Fitzgerald. So I'm enjoying getting into it. You know, I'm not an expert. I read for fun, and sometimes if it doesn't seem fun, I might not read it, but so far, you know, these books are fun and I like them, and I think, you know, they're a really interesting type of history, and there's a time of history which I personally have not studied because I would also have a British focus if I was doing that in academia, so I really like learning about it from an American point of view. And he's a fun person to read. His techniques are fun, they're playful, and quite often they've got good character as well. Kind of like, you know, Oscar Wilde, he's just fun to read because he makes fun things, and these words are fun and they're selected, and I like it. But let me know what you think down below. Please, I'm gonna have my breakfast now. Hope you all have a lovely day. Bye.